Okay, so welcome everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, happy Thanksgiving to those North America joining us. Welcome to our 147th Reading Online Sports Economics Seminar. As last week, a few administrative updates. In the email reminder I sent, there was 2 special issue reminders. One where Bernd is one of the editors for the Journal of Economics and Statistics, where the deadline is next week. Another special issue is being organised for Frontiers in Behavioural Economics by Raphael Flepp, Romain Garriot and Carl Singleton. That deadline is now the end of August next year. And check out emails, look at the details and the link for that. Then Dennis, who's here, is organising a conference next March, 28th to the 30th of March at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Sports Economics Conference, and a call for papers will come out soon, but the deadline will be about January the 10th for that. And then I'm organising the 3rd Reading Football Economics Workshop next May 7th and 8th, and May 9th and 10th will be the 18th Heon Sports Economics Conference, with calls for papers for those coming very shortly. Bernd is going to present, and it's on academic performance and salary expectations of couch potatoes, recreational and elite athletes, evidence from Germany. Bernd, you've shared what looks like the presenter view, so I don't know if you're able to stick on the full view because your slides are actually quite small.
Okay.
Might be if you unshare and then share again on PowerPoint, it might do it.
So share again.
Perfect, that looks good.
Is it now?
Yeah, that's
visible
great.
for everybody?
Yep.
Okay, so first of all, I have to apologize for being late. I have no idea what happened to my Teams on the laptop, but now it seems to work. So this is joint work with Nikolaus Risch, the former president of Paderborn University, and Laura Ogelles, a former PhD student of mine. The idea is a very simple one. Sports participation is usually considered a leisure activity that contributes to individuals' physical as well as mental health. It is not yet clear, however, whether sports participation also improves an individual's labor market prospects. There are a couple of studies from the US, from US college sports, that I will refer to in a minute. But before we get to that, playing sport can be interpreted in 2 directions. On the one hand, it can be interpreted as an investment in one's human capital, which is likely to improve labor market opportunities, and it may serve as a credible signal of mental dispositions such as stamina, endurance, diligence, so characteristics that are usually valued by prospective employers. On the other hand, due to the time constraints experienced by individuals, playing sports is likely to reduce the time devoted by students to prepare for lectures and exams. So it is not yet clear whether physical activity has a positive or a negative effect on students' academic performance, as well as their salary expectations. And to test these competing explanations, we use a rather large sample with detailed information on some 4,700 students attending around 25 German universities and universities of applied sciences to answer 3 different yet closely related research questions. First, do the university grades vary between different types of students? We call them couch potatoes, recreational athletes, and elite athletes. And I will explain in detail how we distinguish between these 3 different types. Does the time required to complete the respective academic degree differ between these 3 types of students? And finally, do salary expectations differ between these three types of students. So a rather outdated study by Bernd et al., more than 20 years old by now, finds that 11 to 12 years after labor market entry, former student athletes earn between 4 and 15% more after controlling for cognitive ability. In a more recent publication, Heckman and Laughlin used two different data sets. Dataset number 1 reveals that males who were college athletes earn wages in their mid-20s that are approximately 12% higher than those of other comparable males. And for females, that wage premium is about 18%. In a second data set, the effects found are slightly smaller. The wage premium earned by former college male athletes is 15%, while the premium earned by female college athletes is close to 0 and statistically not significant. So this is realized wages, and in our case, we ask for expected starting salaries and salaries 5 years after labor market entry. A large number of mostly older studies find that student athletes are poorly prepared for and largely uninterested in academia, and that they come to college mainly to advance their athletic careers instead of their academic careers, resulting in lower grade point averages and higher dropout rates. More recent studies find that the negative impact of athletic involvement on the academic performance of students athletes is significantly smaller outside the season of competition than during the season, and that this negative in-season effect is stronger in sports known to have high in-season time demands, such as football and baseball. There are very few studies available that use data from European countries. So Pfeiffer and Cornelissen are among the first, so far among the only, or the few. And they find that the probability of obtaining a university degree as opposed to a vocational qualification or no vocational degree at all is increased due to exercising sport by about 5 percentage points for both men as well as women. They used the German socioeconomic panel, a representative survey of the German population that is run since 1984 now. Storm and Eske compare the academic performance of Danish elite athletes accepted for enrollment in Team Denmark's youth dual career program with the performance of equally old non-athletes over a period of 10 years. And they find clear evidence to suggest that the former do significantly better in high school, suggesting that there is a transfer of learning and expertise from engaging in elite sports to the academic context, which then has no positive effect on grades. Finally, Munoz-Bouillon et al. Use a large panel of students enrolled at one of the particular prominent Spanish Spanish universities, and find that regular organized physical sporting activity leads to a significantly better academic performance. So student athletes are about 1/10 of a standard deviation in the final grade better than observationally similar non-athletes. This is perhaps a small magnitude, but it's statistically highly significant. So from an economic point of view, 3 different concepts have the potential to explain observable differences between couch potatoes, recreational, and elite athletes. I think I can jump the detailed description or presentation of these theories, as you guys are all familiar with that. So it's human capital theory, time allocation, and signaling theory. Yes, that is something that is familiar to everybody. And therefore, I would like to jump to the data already. So ideally, one would like to use longitudinal information obtained from a large and representative cohort of students who were surveyed 1 or 2 years before they graduate, and again 1 or 2 years after they have started their careers, controlling for sample selection bias due to non-random attrition. I've not yet seen a single study that can use this kind of longitudinal data because it's difficult, if not impossible, to obtain. We therefore use a large and representative cross-section data set. The data was assembled in the summer of 2016 and includes a subsample of elite athletes that we recruited for participation via the German University Sports Federation. So elite athletes are overrepresented in our sample because very little is known about that population. So we have more than 300 elite athletes in our sample. So, of course, the use of cross-sectional data to identify the impact of athletic participation on either expected or realized earnings is problematic because it is possible that students become athletes because they are innately motivated and disciplined. And these characteristics are typically unobservable, but most likely positive correlated with earnings. And if this is the case, student athletes later earn more because better students become athletes. There are 2 different ways to reduce this potential bias. Both are imperfect, admittedly. One possibility is to model athletic participation using a selection rule and then account for the selectivity in the earnings equation. For this approach to work, one needs to identify factors that affect athletic talent but are unrelated to earnings. Finding such a variable or such variables is nearly impossible. A second, also imperfect approach is to include motivational variables in the earnings function in order to hold constant the motivation and discipline that inspires athletes, but also raises earnings. And that is exactly the approach that we adopt here, because our data contain 17 such variables from a validated short version of the so-called Big Five personality inventory. Here you see a map of Germany and the distribution of the institutions where students responded. And we got access to these universities with the help of Nikolaus Risch, the former president of Paderborn University. Each quarter, the presidents of German universities and universities of applied sciences, we meet for a 2-day workshop. And he asked his colleagues at one of these meetings to put our link to the website, to the questionnaire on their website, asking their students to respond. So without his assistance, this project would not have been possible. And this is even more so the case because he is on the board of the German University of Sports Federation. And here he contacted several hundred elite athletes who are currently studying at one of the German universities or universities of applied sciences. And here you see the distribution. Within our sample, we have 4,682 respondents with perfectly completed questionnaires. 7.9% of them are elite athletes, and I said already, they are deliberately oversampled. 19% are couch potatoes, and 73% are recreational athletes. How do we distinguish between these types? One question in the questionnaire was, do you play sports? And the couch potatoes said, no, I don't do any sports at all. Recreational athletes said, well, I do sports. And then we asked them, how many hours per week do you play sport? And the third question was, do you participate in competitions? And possible answers were no, at the local level, regional level, national level, international level. And we coded as elite athletes those respondents who said that they participated in national and international championships in their respective sport. And there are no professional football players, for example, in our sample, but most of these elite athletes come from Olympic sports such as rowing, archery, badminton, etc. So typically sports where athletes do not earn lots of money, but where all that is at stake is reputation. Women are overrepresented, and the answer is, the answer to the question, why is this the case? If you look again at the map, technical universities are completely underrepresented here. And these are the institutions where the majority of the students are male. But we don't care that much about the overrepresentation of women. The average age is 24. Here you see the time allocation of different types of students, average study hours per week, average training hours per week, and total hours per week. And by definition, the couch potatoes do not play sport at all. So average training hours per week is 0. They study about 32 hours per week. Recreational athletes also study about 32 hours and play sport for around 5 hours a week. The elite athletes spend 3 hours less for study per week, end up with roughly 29 hours, and they train around 12 hours per week. Which means that the total workload of elite athletes is 20% higher than among the couch potatoes and 10% higher than among the recreational athletes. Starting salary, this is expected monthly net salary after graduation and 5 years after labor market entry. See, there are around 350 euros difference between couch potatoes and elite athletes. And it's the same 5 years after labor market entry. Clearly, this is purely descriptive. Perhaps the couch potatoes all study art history, where not that much money can be earned, while the elite athletes are all in engineering or medicine or whatever. So we need to carefully control for the field of study to see whether these differences in starting salaries persist. Finally, expected final grade and time to degree. Please recall, lower figures denote better grades in Germany. So the grade range is from 1 to 4. 5 means fail. And couch potatoes expect poorer final grades than both recreational and elite athletes. But again, this can be due that they study more difficult subjects. That means we have to control here for the field of study and a couple of other factors too. And total time to degree. At this stage, we do not distinguish between bachelor, master, doctorate, and other types of degree. So if you study law or medicine in Germany, you have to pass another kind of an exam. And we see that elite athletes expect to need about 1 semester longer than both couch potatoes and recreational athletes. Let's turn to the Big 5 personality inventory. That's an instrument typically used by psychologists to measure differences in mental attitudes and dispositions across individuals. And findings from the psychology literature suggest that an individual's personality is developed at the age of 17 to 18 and does not change very much over the life course. And we have asked our student population to rate themselves on these 17 items, ranging from I'm a hardworking person up to I have a positive self-image. And you can see that for each of these, or for 16 out of these 17 items, the differences between the three groups of students are statistically significant. So this is the traditional Likert scale instrument, ranging from 1, completely disagree, to 5, completely agree. This is a bit difficult to interpret. Therefore, we have the order of the slides is not correct. So we have done a principal factor analysis to reduce these 17 items. And surprisingly, really surprisingly, we are perfectly able to produce the results that others find in other population samples. So we completely reproduce the 5 factors that have been identified by psychologists. So conscientiousness describes a person's ability to regulate impulse control in order to engage in goal-directed behaviors. It measures elements such as control, inhibition, and persistence of behavior. Agreeableness refers to how people tend to treat relationships with others. It focuses on people's orientation and interaction with others. Extraversion reflects the tendency and intensity to which someone seeks interaction with their environment. It encompasses the comfort and assertiveness levels of people in social situations. Openness to experience refers to one's willingness to try new things, as well as to engage in imaginative and intellectual activities. And finally, neuroticism describes the overall emotional stability of an individual through how they perceive the world. It takes into account how likely a person is to interpret events as threatening or difficult, and it also includes one's propensity to experience negative emotions. And here you see how these different items load on the different factors. I've hardly ever seen such a convincing factor analysis. Typically, psychologists are already happy when they have factor loadings of above 0.4. And as you can see here, few are under 0.6. And that made us confident that these factors should be able to explain differences in salary expectations, as well as differences in expected final grades and in expected time to degree. Here you see the average factor scores. The total mean is by definition 0. And here you can see there that with respect to extraversion, the differences between couch potatoes and elite athletes are very strong. Same applies to openness. With respect to conscientiousness, neuroticism, and agreeableness, the differences are slightly smaller, yet remain statistically significant. And when we further distinguish between gender and type of physical activity, we see that male couch potatoes score particularly low on that dimension. Male hobby athletes also score low, as do female couch potatoes, whereas male and female elite athletes, as well as female hobby athletes, score rather high. Similar picture when it comes to openness. Male and female elite athletes score significantly higher than male and female couch potatoes or hobby athletes. Conscientiousness, particularly pronounced among female hobby and elite athletes. Neuroticism, a negatively associated dimension, is particularly high among male and female couch potatoes. And finally, agreeableness. Here, surprisingly, female couch and female hobby athletes score high, while male and female elite athletes score have slightly negative values that are, however, far, far lower than the ones by male couch potatoes and male hobby athletes. So let's turn to the results table. Couch potatoes serve as the reference group in the model estimating the determinants of starting salaries, as well as in the model that looks at expected salaries 5 years after labor market entry. And what we see is recreational athletes expect around 3 to 4% higher starting salaries, while elite athletes expect to earn 9% more immediately after graduation and 6% more 5 years later. And in order to address this causality issue that I referred to at the beginning of my presentation, in the second and fourth model, we add these personality dimensions, and you can see that the effect of being a recreational or an elite athlete is only slightly smaller than in the first model. So now the recreation athletes expect 3% more and elite athletes expect 7% more. What is not surprising, because that has been found in other studies already, is that these personality dimensions have an impact on expected as well as on realized salaries. So extraversion, openness, and conscientiousness are associated with significantly higher expected starting salaries, while neuroticism and agreeableness are associated with significantly lower expected earnings. When we go further down in the list of control variables, women expect to earn 15% less, and that is nearly identical with the gender wage gap that we actually observe in Germany. So even young female academics expect to be discriminated. We control for everything that you can think of. We control for expected starting position, expected working hours per week, etc. And still they expect to earn 15% less. Students who are delayed for whatever reason expect lower starting salary. The effect is statistically significant, yet the magnitude is not that large.
Bernd?
Yeah.
Stefan has got a question for you.
Yes, please.
Sorry, Bernd, just a question of clarification. Can you, what do you mean by expect in this context? Is this is what they say they believe they will earn, or is this actually?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. There is
just their beliefs about their future.
There is quite some evidence that students are pretty able to predict their starting salaries. So there have been a couple of papers by Webbing and Hartog, for example, showing that students are not only pretty good at predicting their starting salaries, they are even much better than other people. If, for example, in Germany, you want to become a teacher at elementary school or at high school, all you have to do is look into the available collective bargaining agreement, and you can perfectly predict your starting salary. Okay?
Yes, no, thanks for clarifying.
People who invest more hours per week in preparing for exams, in writing papers, expect higher starting salaries. Training hours have no effect. Students who spend at least one semester abroad, that has surprisingly no effect on expected starting salaries, although some studies do show that people who went abroad for 1 or 2 semesters have, in fact, higher starting salaries. And we find this typical age effect. We control for family status, field of study, for degree and education of father as well as education of mother. But I've not included the coefficients of these dummies in the table because that would make the thing a bit long. And when we look at expected salaries 5 years after labor market entry, we still see a statistically significant and positive effect for recreational and elite athletes in model number 1. But this effect is now a bit smaller than in model number 1. And when we now include these big 5 personality measures, then our dummies, the coefficients of the dummies for recreational athletes and elite athletes become statistically insignificant. Therefore, the coefficients of these personality dummies change their magnitude, so extraversion and openness are now more important. Conscientiousness is less important, yes, yet all these 3 are highly significant. And finally, agreeableness has about the same magnitude than in model 2. Neuroticism retains the negative sign, but becomes statistically insignificant. And the impact of the control variables is about the same than in models 1 and 2. Let's now move on to the models where we look at the determinants of total time to degree and expected final grade. And you see that recreational athletes expect to study about 1/3 of a semester longer, while elite athletes expect 1 full semester more until they finish their degree. 1 semester longer, given the differences in expected salary, turns out to be a pretty good investment. So studying longer, at least for these elite athletes, does not come with a penalty in the sense of they lose money. Rather, in the long term, they earn considerably, considerably more. With respect to expected final grade, we see that elite athletes expect to graduate with a grade that is 0.17 better. What does that mean in terms of magnitude? That means they expect to graduate with a grade that is about 10% better than the couch potatoes, controlling for field of study and controlling for many other potential confounders. And this effect persists even when we control for the personality dimensions. So people who score high on openness, on conscientiousness, expect better grades, especially when it comes to conscientiousness. That is not at all surprising. While people who score high on extraversion and agreeableness expect to graduate with poorer grades. Gender does not have an effect on expected final grade. Those who are behind schedule expect to graduate with poorer grades. And those who studied abroad expect better grades too. A surprising finding is that those who stayed abroad expect to graduate faster, suggesting that those who go abroad are better students, not only in the sense that they have better grades, but also graduate a bit faster. What is perhaps also surprising is that training hours do not lead to longer time at university. It's the difference between recreational and elite athletes that drives the results. So these coefficients are statistically significant too. So the difference between recreational and elite athletes is significantly different too. And this also applies for the expected final grade. So dual career students, that means students who are at the same time elite athletes, are different from the rest of the student population in the sense that they are very often high performers in both their respective sport and in their field of study. That means universities as well as politicians should consider offering scholarships and financial aid to them to foster their academic careers, especially since successful elite athletes are often role models for many other students. And therefore, universities should invest in building new and renovating old sports facilities and offering a wide range of sports classes on campus to increase athletic involvement of the general student body. Combining these investments with carefully designed incentive systems have the potential to motivate even couch potatoes to start exercising. I do have an appendix with a second preliminary analysis on the impact of couch potatoes, recreational and elite athletes on life satisfaction, happiness, and risk preferences. But I'm not so sure whether this would perhaps exceed our time. James, can I take another 15 minutes?
I think so, yeah.
To walk you through these results?
Yeah.
So the questionnaire also included a standard Likert scale ranging from 0 to 10. How satisfied are you with your life at the moment? And you see that elite athletes score significantly higher at the right end of the distribution. So they score significantly more often 8, 9, and 10 than both couch potatoes and recreational athletes. Same applies to happiness. Here again, the distributions are considerably different. And what is perhaps most surprising is the difference in risk tolerance. How willing are you to take risks? 0 to 10, not at all completely willing to take risks. Here you see the average values. So elite athletes always score higher on average than recreational athletes and couch potatoes. These differences are always statistically significant. And then we again estimate our standard models with happiness, life satisfaction, and risk tolerance, as the dependent variables. In one model, we only use the dummies for recreational and elite athletes. And in the second model, we then also include the personality dimensions. And you see that recreational and elite athletes score significantly higher. These effects are considerable in magnitude. It's between 5 and 10% higher levels of happiness among recreational and elite athletes. That effect is significantly reduced when we control for personality. However, the coefficients retain their initial level of statistical significance. And the same applies when it comes to life satisfaction. Again, difference 5 to 10% compared to couch potatoes. Magnitude is reduced. When we look at the extended model, that also includes the personality dimensions. And in the last model, where we use risk tolerance as our dependent variable, it turns out that both types of athletes score higher, but this effect completely disappears once we control for differences in personality. So extraversion is associated with higher happiness, higher life satisfaction, and higher risk tolerance. Same applies to openness. Conscientiousness is associated with higher levels of happiness and life satisfaction, but a lower level of risk tolerance. Neuroticism is associated with slightly higher happiness, life satisfaction, and significantly higher risk tolerance. And for agreeableness, we find that it is associated with more happiness, more life satisfaction, and lower risk aversion. Among the control variables, what we find is controlling for personality. Women report higher levels of happiness, higher levels of life satisfaction, but no effect on risk tolerance once we control for personality differences. And the explanation is very simple. The personalities of male and female students are quite different from each other. Students who are behind schedule are less happy and less satisfied with their lives. People who study more are less happy and less satisfied. I don't know whether I would recommend them to study less in order to become happier, but that's something we can perhaps talk about. Students who went abroad are less happy when we control for personality. This does not translate into lower levels of life satisfaction, but that is perhaps not very surprising. People who go abroad report higher levels of risk tolerance. Here I have also added the coefficients for the dummies for family status, because that is typically what is being included in happiness studies using samples from the general population, and the results are exactly the ones that are reported in other studies. People who are married report higher levels of happiness and life satisfaction. People who are single and have no partner, people who are divorced, report significantly lower levels of happiness and life satisfaction. And the final coefficient that I want to point out is people with a migration background report significantly higher levels of risk tolerance. So both recreational and elite athletes report higher levels of happiness and life satisfaction than couch potatoes. The respective difference between recreation and elite athletes is also statistically significant for both variables. Finally, both recreational and elite athletes are willing to take significantly more risks than couch potatoes. Again, the difference between recreational and elite athletes is statistically significant. One of the most interesting results that is not visible from these tables here is that female elite athletes report significantly higher risk tolerance than either male couch potatoes or male recreational athletes. So it's the intensity with which people play a particular sport that apparently requires a significantly higher risk tolerance. However, once we control for differences in mental attitudes and dispositions, the magnitude of the respective coefficients is considerably reduced with respect to happiness and life satisfaction, and sometimes that means with respect to risk tolerance, the coefficients even become insignificant. Female athletes display the same levels of happiness, life satisfaction, risk tolerance as male elite athletes. And thus, our findings suggest that elite students' personalities are significantly different from those of their fellow students, whether couch potatoes or recreational athletes. They are more communicative, more relaxed, more accurate, less imaginative, and as friendly as their fellow students. These differences in mental attitudes and dispositions drive the observable differences in happiness, life satisfaction, and risk tolerance. And recommendation, as before, since dual career students are often considered role models for other students, universities should invest in their sports facilities and offer sports classes on campus to encourage students to increase athletic involvement. I think that's it. Yeah, I do have a couple of other slides, but they are not that important in this context. So, thanks for listening. I'm looking forward to your comments and questions.
Thank you very much, Bernd. I'm going to give you a quick Teams round of applause. No, I raised my hand then, didn't I? React. There we go. Round of applause. Thanks, Bernd. That was really fascinating talk. Lots and lots and lots in there in terms of really fascinating results. Ian Burgley-Smith has got his hand up already. So, Ian, please do go ahead.
So I was wondering, do you view the personality measures there? Are they like your control for selection? So do you view that? So you
that's
think
exactly
that,
the idea.
Yeah. So you feel like you're controlling for the personality. So you're controlling for the selection mechanism that leads people into sports, and then so what you're left with after controlling for those is not so much from the sport itself. Is that the interpretation?
Yeah, absolutely.
So then is the policy conclusion that we should, the sport doesn't matter so much. We should just encourage people to have better personalities.
Yeah, the problem is it's pretty difficult to change people's personality once they have reached the age of 17, 18, 19. And investing in these changes is far more expensive than convince people to start exercising.
But if it's all about selection, though, haven't we shown that there isn't an effect left over? So getting more people with bad personalities into sport isn't going to do anything for them.
Oh, no, I don't think so, because there is a sports effect
There's still something
that is being left over, and it's not trivial.
Okay. And then my other question was, do you have information on the different types of sports that they play?
Yes, but here the subsamples become quite small. We have
Because with the selection, I was wondering about sort of sports that are considered like
So we
high
have
class and low
distinguished-
class, like
We have
from poorer
distinguished
backgrounds,
between
richer
team
backgrounds.
sports and individual sports,
Mhm.
and that difference is negligible. So whether you are a marathon runner or a football player, it does not have any effect. There are no football players in the sample, but if you are
Then
a rower,
on the selection side, I was thinking more in terms of like posh sports and working class sports. So like the difference between being involved in yachting and equestrian versus football, boxing.
okay, I must admit we have not checked that possible difference. But I would be surprised to find differences in the personalities of university students, depending on the type of sport they are playing. But we will certainly check that.
I'm not sure. I think maybe different people select into different sports depending on their background. But,
yeah. So we control for parents' education.
Mm-hmm.
And in that sense, we at least indirectly control for the social background.
I see, yeah. All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ian. Alex, got his hand up.
Thank you, Bernd, for the talk. So I will ask a different question, the opposite question of Ian. So if you can go back to the results. If you can go back to results.
Yes, sure. Just a second.
So, yeah.
You mean this one?
Something. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, this one or the grades, or doesn't matter. So you actually assume that the characteristics, they kind of decide whether you are you participate in sports or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that's fine. But my question is, maybe it's the other way around. The causality is the other way around. If you participate in sports, this affects your characteristics. And then we're talking about bad control here, and then it's not clear which of the, whether it's estimation 3 or 4 is the correct one. So let's say if I participate in sports, I have better openness.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's not clear what's going on here, whether you should control for those or not. That's my question.
Okay.
So which one? So do you consider that the causality works the other way around from participating in sport to characteristics? Because now I guess you assume that it's from characteristics to participation.
Yes.
But I kind of challenge you whether it's the other way around. And if it's the other way around, should you control for those anyway? So I again, if I participate in sports, yeah, I have better openness. But you are claiming, no, I have better openness, therefore I participate in sports, and therefore I should control for openness.
Yeah.
But I claim, isn't it the other? Can't it be the other way around?
Yeah, I understand your point. So, but people who are elite athletes in their early 20s have typically started to play their sport when they were kids,
yeah,
10, 12 years old. And by then, the personality is certainly not yet fully developed.
Excellent. And that means that maybe the participation in sports affected their openness and not the other way around.
Yeah, I see your point. But if that's the case, into account,
if that's the case, but if that's the case, I would go for specification 3 and not specification 4, and then my conclusion would differ.
Yeah, I see your point. But what would then be your conclusion?
That that I take the third one, that let alone I don't talk about the other the other controls, but then I say recreation athletes would predict significantly higher salary in 5 years, because in estimation 4 there is no significant difference. So this assumption really crucial here. What is your conclusion? I think
your argument makes sense, and I have to think about it seriously. Yeah, no, I see your point. See your point.
Sorry. Yeah, but okay.
You don't have to apologize.
Thank you, Alex. More questions and comments? Raphael.
Yeah, hi. Thank you very much for your interesting talk. So if I got it right, so the elite athletes, they expect to have lower final grades, but still expect to get higher starting salaries, right? And this was somewhat puzzling for me, and I was wondering how this can be explained.
No, lower grades in Germany are better grades.
Ah, okay. Okay.
The
So then
lower your grade, the better is your exam.
Ah, okay. Okay. So in Switzerland, it's the other way around. Ah, okay. So they expect to have better grades and higher salaries. Okay. And then I was wondering, could this be driven by the institutions, because you have different universities in your sample? So maybe the elite athletes are stemming from one type of institutions that have grades that are not comparable to grades from other institutions?
No, they are distributed all over the country. They are slightly overrepresented in cities where they have particularly good training facilities in their respective sport. But we do not observe a concentration of elite athletes in fields of study or in places that are considered easy or particularly favorable to elite athletes. No, not at all.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Raphael. Daniele, let's hand up next.
Hi, Bernd. I'm not going to put my camera on because my background is not respectable. I'm at home. Quick question about this table. Have you done it separately for men and women? I was just wondering whether the, controlling for these, the big 5 factors, if that, changes the coefficient in a different way for men and women, because there were big differences in the personalities between men and women. And so I thought that would be interesting to do it that way as well.
I have not yet done it, but that is easy to do.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. That's all I had.
Thanks, Daniele. Your hand's back up, is that?
Alex once more.
Yep, Alex's hand is full.
Yeah, thank you. Can you go to another slide? And I want to take this opportunity and to say to Stefan, I sent him an email. Please reply. So yeah. Now this the total time to degree. Now I understand. So my prior would be that those who say that total time to degree is lower, they are better students, I guess. I would kind of more or less guess. And these are some of your results. This is what they suggest. But then I see that recreation, like athletes, they have more time to degree, but they they expect better grades. It's kind of puzzling.
Why?
Because again, if I have more time to degree or less time to degree, I'm a better student. I don't expect any kind of
not necessarily. No. There are other studies.
Because, for example, stay abroad, I would guess that those who stay abroad, they have higher self-confidence, they are better students, therefore they go abroad. Maybe again, it's very speculative, but that's kind of. And then if they stay abroad, I don't know, because you see the stay abroad is always negative, like in terms of total time to degree and in terms of expected final grade. But when we go to your key variables, it changes the sign.
Which key variables do you refer to?
So recreational athletes time to degree is positive and positive in equations 1 and 2, in specifications 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And then it's negative and negative.
Yeah.
But for example, stay abroad is always negative. Or training hours is always positive. Or delay is always positive.
Okay, I see what you mean. So we interacted, for example, the elite athletes dummy with the stay abroad dummy. And in that case, elite athletes who stayed at home expect the same grades as elite athletes who go abroad. With total time to degree, I'm not completely sure what the result was, but I think the interaction term for elite athletes going abroad is also positive when it comes to total time to degree. But I have to check that. The subsamples get a bit small, even though the data set is quite large. When we look at elite athletes going abroad, that's about 1/3 of our elite subpopulation. So elite athletes go abroad more often than recreational athletes, and couch potatoes have the lowest preference to go abroad.
Great, thanks, Alex. And on cue, Stefan has got his hand up.
Well, yes. So, Alex, yes, I got your email and I'll respond. And I'm not turning my camera on since it was Thanksgiving yesterday, and you don't want to see me right now. But I just thinking about this. I mean, these big 5 factors. Do they? Well, let me give you a couple of scenarios. So one is, I have a family bereavement whilst I'm at college, and that therefore, when I respond to this survey, I don't feel very extrovert. I don't feel very open. I'm struggling to do my work. Don't feel conscientious. So, all these scores are going to be low because of the event that happened in my life. Nothing to do with what kind of person I am necessarily. It's just when bad things happen to us in life, we respond negatively, and that can have a long-term impact on our life outcomes. Or secondly, imagine just I'm in a wheelchair. I mean, people in wheelchairs participate in sport and are athletes, but it's harder, it's more difficult. I would expect participation rates of wheelchair-bound individuals are going to be lower on average than the general population. So, and again, that might also affect my scores on all of these things. So in that sense, these these scores and these factors, they're kind of what they really mean is not clear, whether it's events in your life or whether it's to do with the reality of your personality. And one thing I'd also like to add is I would suggest, to be honest, dropping the word couch potato. That's a very judgmental term. You don't, when you call someone, if you call someone a couch potato, it's kind of dismissive. And you know, somebody might be, you know, might choose not to be inactive, but one wouldn't necessarily want to apply the negative connotations of you're lazy, you're just sitting down watching TV all the time, you can't be bothered to do anything. That's not necessarily a fair characterization. So I'd suggest you're not using that word.
Well, these are established concepts in psychology, and psychologists don't consider that insulting or even judgmental.
I don't think the word couch potato is a psychological concept that is
Which word?
Judgmental. Couch potato.
Okay.
That's generally thought of as being a fairly dismissive term. And someone, if you describe someone as a couch potato, so you wouldn't do it to anybody's face if you wanted to be friends with them, unless you could convey that you were really joking and you didn't really mean it. It's just an insult.
What would be an alternative, less insulting expression? Inactive?
Well, non-recreational. Someone who you just want to say. I would say other. You know, I mean, this is just people saying whether they participate in sports, right? And so just non-participants. It's just a neutral term to say you either do this activity or you don't. I mean, the word couch potato suggests there's some virtue. You're kind of assuming virtue, whereas what it seems you're trying to do is to say that there is virtue in this because of your results, not because you're assuming virtue.
Mm-hmm. No, I certainly do not want to insult anybody. That's for sure. Yeah. I think about something else, and I would be happy if you can send me your suggestions. I even thought this is a fancy term, but okay, not everybody shares that impression.
Thanks, Stefan. There were a couple of other hands that popped up and went down while Stefan was talking. I don't know if any of those guys wanted to make a point or if anyone else has got any questions they want to ask.
I do. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. So still on the results, stay abroad. Do you have more information on this variable? Because I was wondering, you say that 30% of athletes, they usually decide to go abroad. But is to decide to go abroad or they have been admitted to a external university? Because for example, in Italy, you have a ranking. So it will make a difference if you say 30 athletes, 30% of the athletes have been admitted or 30% required to go abroad. Because this will self-induce that if more athletes go abroad, they will be better off because they will have a higher ranking, higher grades compared to the other one.
So first of all, these people have already stayed abroad. They do not plan to go abroad. They have accomplished that step already.
Mm-hmm.
And we do not know whether this was for 1 semester, for 2 semesters, or even longer. It's just a dummy variable. Have you spent some time at another university abroad?
Yes, but my question is how you can get admitted to a university abroad? Is like an automatic process or you have a selection?
No, 90% of these people have used the opportunity of the Erasmus program. So
okay, but there is a lot of
to a
variability
university.
because you can go in other university that is like higher ranked, or you can go in a university that is lower ranked, and also the way your grades have been then transferred back to your system can be different. So there is a lot of variation there, I think.
Yeah. You are perfectly correct. But if 90% of the students go abroad via the Erasmus program, my expectation is they go to a university that is comparable in quality to their home university, because otherwise your home university would not have an exchange program with the institution abroad.
I see. But
if you are at, let's say, a poor college somewhere in the east of Germany, you will not have the opportunity to go to Harvard or Stanford.
Yeah, sure. So if you go abroad, this means that you are automatically a better student because it's more likely that you are going abroad. This is the reasoning.
I'm not so sure. I've been responsible at Paderborn University for a couple of partner universities in Europe, in Spain, in Finland, in Italy, in France, in England. And what we very often discover is that weaker students go abroad to finish courses that are considered difficult in Paderborn. Or they do electives that are considered easy. I've never seen a student coming back with an econometrics class, but most come back with organizational behavior, for example.
Okay, so we can say that there are like two groups. One probably that goes abroad to like improve their curriculum and to gain experience, and the other at the bottom that they go to make their career a little bit easier. So probably we should, I don't know, if there is a way to control for at least two groups inside the one that goes abroad, I think would be nice. But I don't know if you have this data. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alessandro. Any more questions and comments? Raphael, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, maybe one more. So you're asking about expected salaries, right? And I would assume that confidence could matter quite a lot in these answers. And confidence is typically closely linked to risk, right? So if elite athletes are more risk tolerant, they might be more confident in their expectations as well. And so if you, as you already have this variable, you could quite easily control for risk tolerance in your models.
Sure.
So just to check.
Yeah. So you suggest simply to include risk tolerance as a potential determinant of expected salaries.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
And that could be correlated with the athletes, right? So to make sure that this is not the case, basically.
That's easy to do. Yeah. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Raphael. In that respect, I thought it's quite interesting that the athlete, if I'm right from your results, the athletes didn't expect to earn more in 5 years' time. So non-athletes expected
5 years later, the effect is statistically insignificant because the personality dimensions gain importance.
Any other questions and comments? You mentioned in a kind of an inspiration role that these athletes might play in one of your comments, and I wondered if you had any kind of, were there any questions in the survey about the impact that knowing athletes in your friendship group might have had on?
No, we don't have any such information. Unfortunately not. See, this survey had to deal with the same problems than any other survey. You have to make it short to convince people to participate. And we offered, I think, 15, 20 euro Amazon vouchers for participation. And we were really happy to have 4,682 completed questionnaires. I know of no comparable sample size in that particular context.
Did you have to give 20 euros out to each of these participants? Or was it a draw for a voucher?
No, a draw.
Okay.
We offered 15 vouchers.
Okay.
At 20 euros.
Say 4,000 times 20 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay, any more final call for any questions and comments? In which case, thank you, Bernd. Another really interesting talk, really thought-provoking, really interesting results, a really nice survey. I look forward to seeing the paper as it develops. I think we return next week. Let me check. Yes, next week, December the 1st, we have Helmut Dietl, who's presenting Not Good Enough or Not Right for the Team, Disentangling Sources of Statistical Discrimination. So do join us for that. In the meantime, Dennis has sent across his call for papers, which is ready. I put it in the chat, and I will put information relating to that in next week's update. But the important points are that obviously this conference will be March 28th to March 30th. It's sports economics and sports management, and you are to, if you are interested in presenting anything in the conference, submit a 200-word abstract with the title to Dennis, coates@umbc.edu, and do that by January the 10th. And there's a range of very interesting looking speakers and special events related to the conference. Thank you, everyone.
I would once again like to apologize for being late and for your helpful comments and suggestions.
That's all good, Bernd. You weren't very late at all, really, and technical problems affect us all. But thank you for being here. Thank you for presenting. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Have a great weekend.
Okay, bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.